Hi, Scott. Welcome to the interview.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, thank you. As you know, my particular interest in speaking to you about OnTarget today is related to adult and continuing education. Your company is obviously in the business of helping people find jobs through a job search process, but it seems to me that much of what you do is actually related to educating adults on something new. I'd like to ask you about your approach to this adult learning, and in particular, about some of your innovative use of technology.
Sure.
To start, why don't you tell us a little bit more about OnTarget? How did you get into the business of teaching adults how to search for a new job?
Sure. So I've had at least a couple of different careers, but I switched careers back in 1998 and became an executive recruiter, headhunter, flesh peddler, body snatcher, and which has been a great career decision for me. But from day one almost, people would call me up, executives would call me up and say, hey, can you help me find a job? And I would say, that's not really what I do as an executive recruiter. If you happen to be a fit for one of the searches I'm conducting, great. Otherwise, I really don't offer services or support to help individuals find jobs. So I've always seen this need out there. And over the years, I developed a process, which initially was a set of a dozen PowerPoint slides. I shared that with some of these people who solicited my assistance and kind of refined this process over the years. And then in 2009, 2010, I formalized that process, took the slides, converted it into a set of modules or chapters or a workbook that went into much more detail in describing the process. And that became the genesis of OnTarget.
Okay, so tell me about your OnTarget blog. How often do you post? How do you come up with the topics that you're going to discuss? And how do your students use it?
Yeah, so I tend to post once a week if possible, usually on Monday mornings. I actually like to send out a Monday morning email with the blog post and keep people informed like that. Topics, often in the course or in the in these weekly OnTarget meetings and interactions with members and just interactions with executives as part of my my recruiting practice, I see things that I want to bring to a broader audience's attention. So that becomes fodder for a blog post. I see common interview mistakes. I see just a number of different things that I think would be worthy of a post. That's kind of number one. Number two would be I kind of view my content for OnTarget as always being in a process of evolution. So as I'm writing new modules, as I'm editing or revising existing modules, I'll tend to extract a piece of content, post it on the blog, and try to get some feedback. It's a beta test. It's a way to get some feedback to see what resonates, what doesn't resonate, what needs clarification, etc. And then I think the third thing I typically use the blog for is just to introduce interesting third-party content.
Let's move to talk about your online modules. I believe they are the content of the process, and I know members, so those who join your OnTarget group, have access to those. Can you tell me a little bit about them and how that works technology-wise and how people use them?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. So I've essentially written a workbook that contains 9 modules or chapters that codify this process of conducting a successful job search. I've written those in Word. I've converted the Word docs to PDFs. I've posted the PDFs online. So members can log in. They can go to the website. They can download the modules. There's also some additional content resources and third-party content that's available on the website as well. Members can also capture information about themselves on the website and potentially share it with others. So their bio, their resume, their background, what they're looking for in their next job. They can also upload a list of target companies, for example, and share those companies with other members. In practice, not a lot of members have done that. And once again, I have not gone out of my way at this point in the evolution of OnTarget to encourage that. But I think there's a huge opportunity for that in the future in terms of making this more of a community, an online community, and less of just a place where people go to download some content.
Let's talk about the third piece in the puzzle, which is the face-to-face meetings. Tell me about, when they occur, how they occur, and the kind, you mentioned there's very particular skills you're trying to build in those and support you're trying to provide. So tell me a little bit more about those and why they're such an important piece of the puzzle.
So the face-to-face meetings occur once a week for an hour and a half to 2 hours in my office. It's typically a group of 4 to 6 OnTarget members. I think there's a learning reinforcement component of the weekly face-to-face meetings. I've discovered that even though something is crystal clear to me in the modules, that often the members either don't read it or they skim over it, or they read it, they don't understand what I'm trying to communicate. So there's an opportunity to clarify and reinforce the content. I think there's also this accountability of components, because it is a course, because it is a process, because there is learning that does require an investment of time and a certain amount of effort. I think the weekly meetings help to hold people accountable, keep them on track in terms of learning the content. But in terms of the skills piece, there are certain skills that I think these members need to learn, to practice, and to master to really find great jobs. So one example, which is probably obvious, is the art of interviewing. Another is doing online research. And what I've discovered is that you can describe these activities or these processes in a module, in a workbook, however, but they are skills that need to be practiced and developed. And doing that is an interactive sort of exercise. You can do that face-to-face, you can do it over Skype, but it needs to be some sort of interactive activity.
Last question. You alluded to a couple things. You mentioned the binders. You mentioned people not really, this particular group of learners, not particularly knowing how to use some of the online tools. What are some of the other barriers you're encountering related to using technology, whether it be a skill set or just a way of learning that they're used to doing?
So I'm not sure how I would describe those barriers, but it feels to me like they're there. And it also feels to me like there's a reluctance to admit to being uncomfortable or unskilled with the utilization of technology across the demographic that's a part of my group. So very seldom will one of the members come to me and say, hey, I'm having trouble getting into LinkedIn. I'm having trouble using the advanced search tool. Can you show me how to do it? They just won't do it, and then they'll come to the meetings and I'll say, okay, well, how's the target list that you committed to building last week? Well, I haven't gotten around to it. And as I probe more deeply, I often discover that some of the reasons that things aren't getting done is because of technological barriers.